Yes, hello everyone. Fáilte Ashkody Cúilín Media. Welcome back to another show here on Cúilín Media with me, Séamus Brady, your host, and I'm joined by Matthew Hurley and Aaron Prendergast once again. Lads, we have another bumper weekend ahead of us in the club championship. We have over 10 inter-county finals to look at. It's going to be something special. And then we also have some big GAA news to talk about. The LGFA Player of the Season nominees have been selected, and we also had two big retirements being announced this week. Stefan Campbell and John Small both announced their inter-county retirements. Lads, been busy. We missed you there on Sunday, but good to have you back with us, Matthew. First of all, come to you.
Yeah, I suppose. So I was just covering my ass probably a small bit on Sunday. I was missing because of the Stars game against the Bars last Sunday, and obviously great win for the lads. Middleton now on Sunday week. Should be a good game. Delighted to be in another county final, and that's our team under Johnny Crowley's now in their third consecutive county final, which is a superb achievement in fairness to them. Well done to the lads for that. And some interesting games this weekend. I'm not sure about the TV selections though for some of the games, but I'm sure we'll get onto that.
We will indeed. Aaron, what's your take? What are you looking forward to this weekend?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of interesting games this weekend, to be fair. A lot of big finals. You have the Donegal final, Antrim final, Laois final. So there's a lot of kind of big games this weekend. You have the Tyrone semi-finals as well, like Tralee Errigal Kieran, which is going to be an absolute cracker as well. Like the last two finals were Tralee and Errigal Kieran, with Errigal Kieran winning last year, Tralee the year before. So that's going to be an interesting one, especially when we know how intense and how crazy the Tyrone football championship is as well, like, and how much drama it brings. So that's going to be a cracking game. And yeah, obviously in the Dublin championship as well, you've got some big games. Crokes versus Na Fianna is going to be an absolute blockbuster. 3 of the last 4 finals have been voted them. We remember the 21 and 22 finals where Crokes broke Na Fianna hearts, and it's interesting, like, you know, like Na Fianna upsetting Crokes in football last year or last week. Could Crokes do the similar, kind of do the same now to Na Fianna? Some rivalry between both of those two clubs for two teams that are on opposite ends of the city as well. So, looking forward to cracking into it.
Absolutely. I think one of the most interesting things you always look at when it comes to Na Fianna and Crokes is I always look at, like, what are the two main sports colleges in Dublin, DCU and UCD, and you look at Na Fianna right next to DCU, and it's tied up, like the sponsor is on the jersey of Na Fianna. DCU, McGowan's, which is the nightclub that you'd go to if you're in DCU, that is completely ran by Na Fianna. And then you've got UCD down the other end, who are completely tied to Kilmacud Crokes. It is quite interesting to look at that. And Aaron, just like on a brief one, do you think that that's a symptom of those two clubs being the big, or do you think like it is an absolute feature, like it is one of the reasons why they are so successful, or do you think it makes no difference whatsoever and it's just by chance?
I think it probably helped in building those clubs up. Do you know what I mean? Probably helped. It probably does help to a certain degree, especially when you are able to attract other players as well from other counties, who maybe going to college around that area or working around that area as well. So yeah, definitely does play a part. But I suppose it's just the areas as well. It's just huge, like especially around Na Fianna. Like there's so much pool of an area there. I know there's other clubs as well, like in the vicinity and everything else. But there's just so much you can work with, and then obviously it goes down to obviously the investment by the GAA and Dublin and everything else sort of into making club facilities better and stronger. And like a lot of clubs, especially like Na Fianna and Crokes, like they have so many different teams. Like, do you know what I mean? Like Crokes have got like 9 or 10 different men's teams. Na Fianna probably similar as well. And then you've got the ladies teams and the hurling, the camogie. Like this, I remember there was a stat that came out like a couple of years ago at the amount of members. I think like Crokes had more members than some counties would maybe have playing in age. You know what I mean? Yeah.
They'd more under 14s than Leitrim. I think that was the stat for just 1 year.
Yeah. So like it's some resources that those clubs have. And that's why obviously when we were speaking 2 weeks ago, it's you want more clubs to try and bridge the gap, because it does feel like you've got like a kind of like a top 4 and then everyone else is kind of chasing. But look, we'll see if Luke and Sarsfields can maybe upset that apple cart this weekend.
Absolutely. We'll be keeping a close eye on it. Anyway, Peter is leading the way when it comes to the comments. Listening to Carl O'Connell's interview with Wooly, mad how he only started playing Gaelic football at 17, makes county and receives an All-Star. Do you think we'll see that kind of trend again? I think we will. I think that some players are just kind of born with it. He said he only became a county starter at 27 years of age. And then the biggest stat match you're going into this weekend, which, you know, it's been a debate that has been going on over the last few years, but it's kind of the rise of super clubs. Like Peter pointing out here, 9 clubs still on course for the senior double. Is it a worrying trend? Because you're looking at the names there: Slotneil, Ratoath, Nafina, Ballyboden, Ace, Mullinlavat, Lockmore, Castleiney, Ayr, O'Guinness. And a lot of them are, in terms of finances and urban population centres, they're in the biggest parts of those respective counties. Is it a little bit of a worrying trend? Like we're seeing Ballygunner 12 in a row, you know, Slotneil 13 titles in a row. Is it a bit of a worrying trend, or is it just kind of something that has always been there in the club game?
Well, I think the only 2 clubs there, you could put out the stat all you like, but the only 2 clubs there that are doing absolutely exceptionally when you consider the context and everything is Slotneil and Lockmore Castleiney, because it's the same group of players. And you see it down here in Cork, Newcestown, same group of players, exact same across both codes, and they compete in both codes. I know Newcestown are the hurling, but they're in the football this weekend. But that has to be considered an actual brilliant achievement. Naas as well, to be fair. What did I say? Slotneil and Lockmore Castleiney, and Naas as well, to be fair. Naas do have a bit of a crossover in terms of players as well. But when you look at the players that Peter did, or the teams that Peter mentioned there, Nafina, Ballyboden, Ayr Guinness, for instance, they're pretty much 2 separate teams. Maybe Ayr Guinness is a bit of a stretch. I know Shane O'Donnell doesn't play football. I know Iggy Muguero doesn't play hurling either. So at least there's a bit of, you know, stability there in terms of who they can play in hurling, who they can play in football. There's no fitness issues there. But I know David Reedy plays both, so that's an exception there. But when you look at the Fina, when you look at Ballyboden and St. Enda's, I know Kilmacud Crokes are out, but when you look at them, when you look at 2 of them in hurling and football, it's 2 separate teams. Like you look at Kilmacud a few years ago in the Leinster finals, they played a doubleheader involving Kilmacud Crokes. And many people say, oh, that's unfair. Like the fans might get affected. Okay, the fans don't matter that much. What about the players? They'd have to tog out in another county final or another provincial final and put on the hurling gear or whatever. But it's 2 separate teams. I think only Brian Sheehy played on the bench for the footballers and played for the hurlers then after that. So they are big areas. The likes of Ballyboden, the likes of Nafina, the likes of Kilmacud Crokes, that is not really much of an achievement. But when you look, to be fair, when you look at Slotneil, Brendan Rodgers, very good hurler as well as a footballer. Shane McGuigan, as we looked at last year, very good footballer, but equally a very good hurler, wingback. Chrissy McCaig, I know he's only sticking with football this year, but I think that's only because of the age he is at this present moment in time. I think Shane McGuigan, Cormac O'Doherty, I think still plays a bit of football. So Slotneil deserve a lot of credit for that, but they are overpowered in Derry as well. I think, honestly, the club out of that list that deserve them well about the most credit is Lockmore Castleiney. They're the dominant force in Tipperary. In hurling, they're doing pretty well as well, even though I probably wouldn't say they're favourites at this present moment in time. I'd still go for Nina Arrow to win the Tipperary Championship, but that is down to opinion. So I think Lockmore Castleiney are definitely a very good club in terms of that. But I think when you pull out those kind of stats, you need to look at the context in that as well. How the clubs are doing in terms of what players they're using. Is it 2 separate teams? Is it big urban areas or whatever? Or is it a small kind of an area like a Lockmore Castleiney using the same group of players more or less? So I think that needs to be looked at. But to be fair, Séamus, I think some clubs are doing well. In fairness, Lockmore Castleiney are punching above their weight considering the success they're having at this present moment in time, considering the area there, and considering like they're playing across both codes simultaneously. But when you look at the big clubs like the likes of Lafinas and Ballybodens, for me, I don't think they deserve as much credit as clubs up and down the country that actually play both codes.
It's a very, very good point. And I think on top of that, you do have to look as well at the amount of players that they bring in from other clubs. I mean, that's another key feature of their success over the last few years. I mean, Ballyboden's best player, I think, throughout the club championship has been Dara Sweeney in corner forward. I think he's been absolutely unbelievable. But around midfield, they are powered by Cian Darcy from Galway. Kilmacud Crokes, Shane Walsh, and Paddy O'Connor as well from Sligo has been in there. Devin Burns, the Kerry goalkeeper, he was in there this year. He didn't play in that semi-final against Na Fianna, and O'Hanlon actually did play better than David Higgins, the Kilmacud keeper that was in there. But then on top of that, you're looking across the codes. This isn't something that is rare. Na Fianna have Keelan Sexton from Clare as their full forward this year in the football. He's had a very, very good year for Na Fianna, and probably one of the reasons why they've managed to get to the final. Then on top of that, in the hurling, they have Liam Rush, who transferred in from Pats Palmerston. They also have Brian Ryan, who's transferred in from Limerick. They have Hannah Tyrrell, who's moved from Round Towers Clondalkin in the LGFA. So my point is that this, and it has never been, I feel like I'm being too harsh on Na Fianna, and bring up other examples. Ballyboden St. Enda's had Paul Durkin in the team when they won the All-Ireland. Kilmacud Crokes have had the likes of Brian Kavanagh, Kevin Dias over the years. Don't even get me started on what Parnell's did, buying in all them players. Vincent's have the likes of Brendan Egan from Sligo, Enda Varley from Mayo over the years. And that's helped them to win the titles that they've won. St. Jude's were probably the worst at it. St. Jude's, one of the years, I think it's only 1 year ago or 2 years ago, but there was one stat that stuck in my head, whereas their opening game in the championship, 9 out of the starting 15 were not from St. Jude's. They had transferred in from clubs around the country, and some of their big performers over the last decade, Matthew, yourself, Niall Coakley from Cork, and it's type of thing where you're looking at it and you're like, there is no rules when it comes to this. There's absolutely no rules. You can get a player in from any part of the country for whatever you want, basically, because the GAA have stuck with the amateur thing. And I do agree, but it is a type of thing. And Peter says here as well, remember the Eamon Fennell debacle of a transfer where he tried to move from O'Toole's to St. Vincent's, and eventually it did happen. I agree. I would love if the ruling was clear. Because it does make a difference. It absolutely makes a difference. Alva Davern won player of the match there for Kilmacud Crokes in their final win over Sylvester's the other night. And everything, believe me, everything went through Alva Davern. If she's not playing, do Kilmacud Crokes win that game? Who knows? Very, very difficult to say. And the thing is, when you're looking at this, everybody does it. Everybody has players in Dublin that are not from Dublin. Aaron, as a Dub, is it a problem? Are you fine with this? When you see players transferring in, does it worry you at all that it could just then become a financial race almost to get these players in, that every club is going to be trying to get their hands on the next Keelan Sexton or the next Shane Walsh?
I think it's not a problem yet, but it kind of is slowly becoming that though, isn't it? When you look at the last couple of years, there are so many.
It caused Parnells to go under.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? But you are seeing more and more players, like Na Fianna, obviously, as you said, with Keelan Sexton. There's been all the players you mentioned with Hughes as well. You had Pat Spillane obviously playing with them as well. You had a load of players who've kind of come to Jude's, and it has been happening across the board. As well. So it is definitely something to be concerned about. I think I don't know, it's one of them, if it keeps happening, if these grow, if there's more players that come on board, because obviously it is one of them things, it is a bit of a loophole. Obviously a lot of people do live in Dublin, do commute to Dublin because of work and everything else, and that's obviously why the population is so high. It's the capital city, obviously. I know, Matthew, you say Cork is the real capital, but Dublin is the capital officially, shall we say. So look, that's always going to attract players, and that's obviously why Shane Walsh was available, because he was living and working in Dublin. There's going to be other players as well. Now, not a lot of players will make the commute back to their own counties to play for their clubs. But even as Keelan Sexton was saying in one of his interviews, kind of in the club championship this year, it's such a commute back and forth to Clare every year that it makes sense. Might as well join a club, and you're obviously going to join one of the clubs that are the best because you have the best opportunity to be successful. Do you know what I mean? Shane Walsh could have went to multiple clubs in Dublin, but he went to Kilmacud Crokes because he knew that was the one where he had the best chance at winning an All-Ireland. So I don't know. I think maybe it's something they do need to look at probably in the next couple of years, in terms of the areas that players are actually living in. Does there need to be a rule where they can only have a certain amount of players from other counties? And I'm saying across the board as well, like across every club championship up and down the country. Do players maybe have to have been living in the county for a certain period of time before they can then play for a club? It's a difficult one. It's a grey area because obviously you don't want to be stopping lads playing for clubs as well, and playing for teams, and that's certainly not what we want to do. But it might be one to keep an eye on over the next few years.
It is, but then again, it's like the fucking Spider-Man meme. Like, do you know what I mean? Where like Ballybowden and the Fiend are going to be going into a final now against each other, where they both have players, inter-county players from other counties that are drastically helping them in their push to win the Dublin Championship. And that was what was very refreshing last year about Cúilín winning. Was Cúilín won the Dublin Championship, they won the Leinster Championship, and they won the All-Ireland with 15 lads born and bred in Dalkey who grew up playing for Cúilín. And that was something that was quite refreshing, and I had massive, massive respect for their All-Ireland success as a result of that. Not to say I didn't have respect for the other ones that have won. Yeah. But it's just a little bit more, it's a little bit concerning because, as I said, you're looking at the two clubs, because where you'd say as well, where are most of the players transferring to? With the exception of St. Jude's. And St. Jude's do have a good bit of money. Like, that's one thing that would, like, St. Jude's do have a good bit of money. But where are most of the players are going to Nafina, Kilmacud, Nafina, Kilmacud and Ballybowden. And it's like Cúilín stand as kind of an example of how money doesn't guarantee players are going to move, because Cúilín have a lot of money and players aren't moving to Cúilín. And maybe it's a thing where, but then again, in the hurling, they had Donald O'Shea from Galway, who was absolutely amazing in their last game against Kilmacud Crokes that got them out of the group. So I think everybody takes part in it. There is no rule, but I do think it kind of needs to have a rule put down. Just some grey area. And look, we're just spitballing. We didn't expect to have such a debate on this. But Matthew, as a feeler, like, where do you start to put the line down? Like, should we look at, what the Premier League had almost, that like a certain number of players in your starting 15 have to be born and bred in that club? Is that a way that you can do it? Like, that 12 out of your starting 15 has to be, born and bred members of that club? And then how do you define that? Or like, how can we get about this?
As Aaron said earlier, it's not much of a problem now to put in that sort of ruling, but in the future, if this becomes well overboard, then yeah, I think that's probably needed in fairness. Just to answer Peter's question on the parish rule there, in Cork, there's no parish rule, just to answer that question. I've seen some Cork minor county players actually, I'm not naming names now, but some minor players will transfer from a junior A club, which is like the 6th tier Cork football, to the 1st or 2nd tier clubs, which would obviously boost their chances in getting into the inter-county team. That's for themselves. But look, I'm not really a fan of it. And this isn't like Dublin for work and stuff like that. This is like players transferring in the same division and the same part of the county. So that is, I'm not a fan of that. Again, I'm not naming names over that. But one county that does have a parish rule, I know this for a fact, is actually Kerry. Kerry do have a parish rule, because I know a few lads in Kerry, they couldn't play for a certain club and they had to play for the parish club. It was just two rival clubs. This club would have been the senior club in Kerry, and then these lads had to transfer to a smaller club, let's say, in Kerry then after that, because it was in their own parish where the house was, where they live. And that's where Kerry excel in fairness for parish rules, because like it bans the possibility of, I'm not saying David Clifford would transfer from Fossa, but it would ban the possibility for David Clifford transferring from Fossa to Dr. Crooks. That's gone. You can't do that in Kerry. No matter what job you have or whatever, it's where you live in the county. And I'll say this again, I don't think David Clifford is the type of player to transfer away from Fossa. I think he'd want to help his club genuinely. But through the times in intermediate and junior, I know they're still stuck in intermediate. But even now, I don't think David Clifford would transfer. But that rule is set in Kerry, and you still have to give Kerry a lot of credit for that, because minimises that sort of carry on in the county. You look at the comments there on Eamon Fennell. Like, if that was in Kerry, Eamon Fennell would be told to stay at his club, do not move. That's where you live. You can't do that. You can't transfer to a bigger club just to suit your own needs. You have to stay with your own parish club, and that's final. Kerry do that. I'm not sure do the rest of the country do that. Maybe Peter would let us know. But I think that sort of ruling would be very, very good for Dublin. If there is, I'd imagine there's not one already. Possibly one for Cork as well, I think, would be an ideal rule as well. And maybe just for the rest of the country, just to eradicate all this, in fairness to it. So look, I think that needs to be fixed. And who knew that we'd credit Kerry on something like this? But I do think that is probably the hole we need to go down, and that is the platform we need to replicate, in fairness, for this sort of issue to stop.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that the way it's set up is kind of like we either beat them, either get involved or you get ran over because you're not doing this thing and you're sticking to your principles. And lads, we have a full house. Liam is in the waiting room now, and here he is. Liam, welcome to the show. We are just about to jump into the GA news. We had a little debate there about club transfers and everything like that, but we are going to get into stuff that has happened in the last few days in the GA since myself and yourself were discussing it on Sunday. So starting off with the news that came first, and that was Stefan Campbell announcing his retirement from the game. So I'm going to miss this guy, to be honest. I'm going to miss Stefan Campbell. What a player. Like, every time this fella came off the bench, he injected new life into the game. You think about his setup for Aaron McKay's goal in the All-Ireland final of 2024. Aaron, I'll come to you first. Very rarely has a substitute made such an impact on a championship. You think about Kevin McManaman in 2011, but Stefan Campbell very arguably deserved an All-Star in 2024 for just how much of an impact he had on every single game that he came into off the bench. What a legacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, he was there at their trump card. Like, it was one of them where there were so many questions around, like, why is he not starting? Why is he not starting? But some players are just sometimes always better coming off the bench. And I think Kevin McManaman's a perfect example. Like, he was another brilliant player for Dublin. He had good games when he started, just like Stefan Campbell did as well. But you just think of those moments coming off the bench. And he was a big miss for Armagh last year as well, like with his injuries and everything else. So, like, that was kind of huge for Armagh. Look, could he have changed the game versus Kerry the way they were playing? Probably not. But, having him there would have been a big difference, I think. And yeah, I think it's a big miss for Armagh. There's no question about that. Like, having him as an option to come off the bench with 15, 20 minutes to go when you're chasing the game. When we were talking about last week, we were talking about players where, like, the streets will remember and everything else. I think Stefan Campbell is also one of them. Like, some of his 2-pointers as well. Like, he's such a skillful player as well. Very, very hard to dispossess. Physically very strong as well for someone who looks kind of small in kind of stature, like in terms of physique or anything like that. But yeah, very, very good footballer. And it's going to be a big miss for Armagh. There's no question about that. Look, they do have plenty of good young players coming through, but he will be a big loss for them going into next year. He
certainly will. We have a couple of comments in about him. Kid Cuddy says Soupy deserved an All-Star in 2024, and Peter says Soupy, the super sub, modern day Kev Mack, on many occasions was the grain of rice for Armagh in the clutch moments. I mean, Matthew, Peter said it there. When you think about Stefan Campbell, you think about him changing the game. None more so than the semi-final, I would say, against Kerry in 24, and then the final that year, setting up the goal for Aaron McKay.
Not many super subs would be thought about as an All-Star nominee, but that was what Stefan Campbell was. Normally, I wouldn't probably have super subs in the All-Star team, but he definitely was worth a mention considering the impact that he did make. Obviously, the game against Kerry, who could forget that? And then the game against Galway, probably the most exciting moment of the game, because I still die to the hill on this. That was the most boring All-Ireland final I've ever watched. But Stefan Campbell changed kind of the kind of the memories of that game by injecting something that no other player on the pitch could do. just have a burst of pace, get into the areas, and hand pass the ball across the square. And Aaron McKay was right there to fist the ball at the back of the net. Look, it was a brilliant moment, and it won Armagh their second All-Ireland title. And Stefan Campbell owes the county absolutely nothing. An incredible servant for Armagh, had made his inter-county debut in 2013. Obviously, went into the panel initially in 2011, and he has been through some dark days as Armagh footballer. Obviously, going out in the qualifiers, most notably to Mayo 2019 and 2017, getting a heavy beating off Tyrone in the quarterfinals. That was tough days for Armagh, but Stefan stuck through that, and he could have easily switched to soccer. Like the Northern Irish Soccer League, you've seen other players, you've seen other GA players, most notably Matthew Fitzpatrick for Antrim, transfer to soccer rather than Gaelic games. But he stuck at it. He wanted to make memories with Armagh, and fairness to him, he won his deserved All-Ireland title. Obviously, the Ulster Championship eluded him, which was unfortunate. Like many Armagh players, the likes of Rian O'Neill and Darren McKay and all them brilliant players, Rory Grugan. So look, he's been an absolutely brilliant player for Armagh, injected a bit of brilliance that won them the All-Ireland eventually in 23, and he will be missed from an Armagh point of view. And who will take up the mantle of being a super sub now for Armagh? It's going to be very, very difficult to see, but I'm sure Kieran McGeeney will have a trick up his sleeve in trying to find that replacement.
Certainly so. Peter, here's to Soupy on many occasions, the grain of rice for Armagh in the clutch moments. Dublin was great, says the streets. We'll not forget Soupy Campbell. I think, Liam, when you look at it like that, and when Matthew's talking about it there, the key difference is that if Armagh didn't have Soupy Campbell in 24, they would not have been All-Ireland champions. When you're talking about his legacy, that is something serious there. When you look at the atmosphere, like I agree with Matthew, in terms of quality, it was a very poor All-Ireland final, but in terms of atmosphere, it was electric. And like the Armagh fans always bring it in spades. That All-Ireland will go down in history regardless, and Stefan Campbell played a huge part.
It'll go down in history anyways. It was the worst final I ever saw in my life, to be honest with you. It was I remember watching it on holidays, and there was people getting up to leave the pub in Spain because they're just like, there's better things to be doing. But no, in all seriousness, no. They wouldn't have got to that All-Ireland final without his impact against Kerry. And I think it's a shame that he didn't feature against Kerry in this year's quarterfinal, which was a shame. He could have made a big difference to that game potentially. You never know. Look, not saying he would have avoided Kerry scoring the over 30 points in the game, but he might have made some bit of a difference when Armagh were somewhat in control at the start of the second half. You just never know. And it's a shame that his last game ends with the defeat against Galway in the essentially the round robin series. But yeah, look, excellent player. He's a squad player, and that's exactly what you would have wanted over the last couple of years. It's what you need nowadays, especially from big panels. And you know, he's one of those players that showed last year that the GAA has become the sport that you need 20, 25 lads in a panel to win All Ireland, and not just a starting 15, you know. So yeah, no, he'd be a big miss for Kieran McGeeney's side. Like you said, look, Armagh have a lot of fantastic young footballers coming through, so there will be they'll find a replacement over the next couple of years anyways, but it's going to take a long time. Like Jonas, he's the type of player that kind of like you mentioned there with McManaman and players like that. When he's coming off the bench, you're thinking, I'm going to have a busy few 15, 20 minutes here with this guy. So yeah, no, he's going to be a big miss for Armagh. It's great to see him signing up to play with is it Lurgan Celtic he's playing for, so that'd be nice for him to continue on playing that. And but look, at the end of the day, is he 34, is he 35, one or the other? Like, you know, he's had a long career behind him, and yeah, listen, it's a shame that he won't win an Ulster title, and it's one that he might regret, but at the same time, listen, he has an All-Ireland for Armagh. He's one of few men in history that can ever say he has an All-Ireland with Armagh. He's played in multiple Ulster finals as well, so I'm sure he'll have no regrets.
Yeah, I think like it's easy for us to sit on the outside here, and like I always kind of looked a little bit how would you call it, hesitantly on people that would come out. Like I think Andy Moran did it, where he came out and he was kind of saying in his book that, you know, we're winning on All Ireland, like it isn't the be all and end all. And I was a little bit like, okay, you know, I don't really buy that you're fully happy that you didn't win one. Of course you'd want to win one, and I think of course Stefan Campbell, if you were to ask, sit him down and, you know, have a pint with him, I think it will always bother him, and I think it will always bother anybody from that Armagh team if they don't win an Ulster title. I think it will bother them that they didn't, because they had a team that was definitely good enough. And I think if you look at those Ulster finals against Derry, against Donegal twice. The game was there for them. They could have won it if things had gone differently. The penalty shootouts, the extra time, everything like that. Like, they could have got over the line. But he's had an amazing career. And I think if you had offered him, what he's finished up with, as you mentioned, Matthew, when he was going through them dark days, like if you'd gone to Stefan Campbell, after the battering that they took off Tyrone in the 2017 All-Ireland quarterfinal and said, you'll finish your career with an All-Ireland medal, I think he would have snapped your hand off for it. So all's well that ends well. Peter says, apparently years ago, Geezer presented Soupy's club with medals and Soupy with the Player of the Year award. Geezer told him he would win an All-Ireland with Armagh. Unbelievable stuff. We have another big retirement though, Aaron, and this one hits us directly hard. Another soldier from the 5 in a row has dropped out. John Small, one of the soldiers of Dublin's 6 in a row winning team, one of the best defenders to ever represent Dublin, has retired. He announced his retirement there today. Big loss for Jared Brennan, big loss for Dublin, but he owes his county nothing. He is a certified legend of the game, and all the best in retirement, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think for us Dublin fans, we'll definitely miss him. We'll definitely see him as a legend of the game. Some opposition fans might be, mightn't think the same as him. You mightn't necessarily think of him as a legend. But yeah, look, he's been an incredible servant to Dublin. Phenomenal defender. Very aggressive, very hard hitting. I know plenty of Mayo players who were on the receiving end of many high challenges. But look, he was. Yeah, well, he was probably a player back in maybe the 2000s or the 90s or something like that. He wouldn't have looked out of place, to be honest with you, in terms of how physical he was. But yeah, there's no question he was a leader. He's had his injury problems over the last couple of years. He didn't really play much at all last year. Like even one of my mates, when this news got announced, even texted me and said, "Geez, I thought he retired last year." Do you know that way? Like, because he has had a lot of kind of injuries and he didn't really feature too much last year. So yeah, look, it is one of them, and I think, to be honest, like I think with Jared Brennan and Dublin, like we need to be kind of moving the team forward. We can't be relying on players from that 5 and 6 in a row team, and we need to be moving forward and bringing new players in and giving new players opportunities. Yeah, no, absolutely, like a legend for Dublin. There's no question about it. Probably one of the unsung heroes, maybe of that kind of generational team. But yeah, I think the big question now is his brother Paddy. Like, is he going to be there next year? That's going to be the big one. And hopefully, because I think he, especially with his age profile, with our forwards as well, that we kind of were starved of too many natural forwards other than the likes of Con and Cormac, because a lot of injuries there. I think that's the big one now to keep an eye on. Will Paddy be there next year?
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. It's one to be keeping an eye on. Am I right in saying, has Niall Scully retired?
Don't think so. I haven't heard anything about that.
Okay, I just want to double check, because I seen someone saying that he's still playing. I thought I heard it. I just want to make. No, he hasn't retired. He is not retired. Sorry, that's my mistake. But I was just double checking there to make sure.
You're retired tomorrow.
Yeah, just after
Romano over here.
But like, Aaron, as you're talking there, like when we're talking about that legendary Dublin team that won 6 in a row, the squad photo from the 5 in a row was posted on Balls.ie's Instagram there, and it shows only 9 players that were posing for that panel photo that day against Kerry to complete the 5 in a row. Only 9 of them are still remaining. Like, that's absolutely mental. And just looking at the sheet here, Brian Fenton's gone, Dean Rock gone, James McCarthy gone, Michael Dar McCauley, John Small, Paul Mannion, Michael Fitzsimons, Diarmuid Connolly, Bernard Brogan, Eric Lowndes, Kevin McMenamin, Jack McCaffrey, Johnny Cooper, Paddy Andrews, Philly McMahon, Stephen Cluxton, Keane O'Sullivan, all gone in the space of 6 years. How on earth are you going to deal with a loss of players like that? So I think it's inevitable that there will be a little bit of a drop-off, safe to be said. But John Small, I'll miss him a lot. Absolute warrior. And the one thing I always respect about John Small is he played the game hard. Like, he went in 100 mile an hour. But I never saw him do anything filthy. Like I never saw him, fish hook someone or put his finger in someone's eye or do something where I thought like that's really nasty, like stamp on someone's leg or anything like that. I think one moment that kind of summed it up for me was the moment with David Clifford where they're wrestling and then the ref, goes in to talk to them and the two of them just kind of laugh with each other and have a little fist bump, because that showed me on some level he plays the game fucking hard, but you could probably sit and have a pint with him after. And I think kind of cut from the cloth of those 90s players like your Mick Lyons and stuff like that. Yeah. But Matthew, you're smirking on some level. You don't agree? I think I know where you're going to go with this. I think you're going to go with the Owen McLaughlin challenge.
Yeah, I'm not sure Owen McLaughlin would agree with you, Séamus. I'm not sure he'd have a point with you.
But I have it on good authority that John Small messaged Owen McLaughlin straight after the game. I apologize.
Okay.
For that. And then,
did he apologize to James Horan? Because he looked seriously pissed.
And the other thing as well is like, was that like let's debate, was that a filthy fucking challenge? Was that like disgraceful, or was that just two people going for the ball as hard as they could and it came out bad? And that was my first reaction, was he was going for the ball 100 miles an hour.
That was probably mine as well, looking at it. But when the crowd get rowdy over that incident, and when a manager is basically talking obscenity, I know we can't hear James Horan exactly, but we can lip read.
It wouldn't be like Mayo fans to get carried away now, would it?
Oh no.
These Mayo fans don't watch this.
There's your clip for the week.
But definitely James Horan was shouting obscenities, and if that happens, jeez, like, no, I think, look, he went in hard. It just ended up looking bad. I'll put it that way. It did end up looking bad. But what John Small reminds me of a player in general, John Terry in soccer. Went in hard. Very, very good player. Most legendary Premier League centre-back. Yes, there are some things that other fans don't like about that certain player, but he was a fantastic defender. And in my opinion, the best centre-back I've ever seen. I think he was. I remember a game, actually. I know the Leinster Championship was a bit of a joke over the last few years, but there was a moment in the game against Meath. This wasn't anything filthy now, but it was the game against Meath in the 2020 game, when a lot of people were saying, oh, Meath will come up with a plan. They're in Division 1. They might actually trouble Dublin, and it's without fans as well, so there won't be any hill noise. But what Dublin did that night, and especially John Small, was like, no way, you're not getting past me. And bullied Meath players out of it. Obviously, in a fair, constructive way. He was absolutely outstanding at his role in the centre back role. I thought he was absolutely outstanding and one of the best I've ever seen. A lot of people might disagree with me on that. A lot of people might argue, what about, let's say, Aidan O'Mahony from Kerry or Keith Higgins from Mayo? I think John Small was a guy, as you rightly said there, Séamus, was a guy that went in hard, but went in fair as well, most of the time. Obviously, the challenge in the 2021 semi-final, some people might have different opinions on it. But I think he was an outstanding defender, and definitely all the best for him in his retirement as well from intercounty football. What a legendary defender. You look at that Dublin team now, it's really, really broken up, and it's going to be difficult to see how they can achieve anything next year. And will your survival status be in danger in Division 1, do you think?
Tough to say, man. We're like really, really tough to say when we're here. But for me, just speaking, best centre half back I've ever seen, he's definitely one of them. For me, I really always loved Carl Lacey from Donegal. I thought he was always amazing. You may compare him to John Terry straight away. I was thinking, well, I hope there's no Wayne Bridge in this story.
Or racist remark.
Yeah. I hope there's none of that going on with them. Or
I would have said more Nemanja Vidic, just someone who sticks their head where they probably should, but comes out the right way and would probably rather bleed out his entire body than lose a tackle, possibly.
I would agree. That's a very, very, very good comparison. I always loved watching him go up against Peter Hart as well. I thought any time the two of them went up against each other, it was always fireworks. And like the thing is, he was a superb player. And he's the type of player that I could, because the challenge with McLaughlin, like, I'll be honest, when I watched it, I thought it was like, do you know how, like, you know, in a corner in football, they tell you, like, take ball and man. I thought he was trying to get the ball and fucking flatten. I thought it was like trying to do both, and it just came out horrible. Like, the challenge was just awful. But then I have it that he messaged them after the game, apologizing for it and everything like that. I've never seen him do some of the things that I've seen Ryan McMenamin do, that I've seen Neil McGee do, that I've seen Philly McMahon do, and Paul Galvin do. And, like, that's just me personally, is that, like, or Gareth McKinless did it very recently to Damien Comer, the stamp on the leg. Now, like, my thing is, right, is that, and maybe John Small did do those things. Maybe he's just so smart that I never really saw a crystal clear example of it. And if he did it, I wouldn't be stunned. Like, I wouldn't be absolutely blown off my, like, but the point is that I appreciate players that play the game hard and they're really, really tough and they go in for everything 100%. Like, the kind of embodiment that I'd have is like someone like Mick Fitzsimons, someone like Keith Higgins, someone like Tony Scullion, that goes in and they bite your nose off to get the ball. But once the game's over and once they retire, every opponent that they've ever had, like every opponent that Mick Fitzsimons has ever had, not one of them speaks ill of him now. Whereas other players that have played the game, I mean, you'd have a hard time getting, like, the names that I listed there, you'd have a hard time getting players that have played against them to say nice things about them. They'd say stuff like, oh, they're a great player, but that's probably where they'd leave it. Again, they've great respect for what they did in the game, but that's probably where they'd leave it. Whereas when Mick Fitzsimons retired, I remember a lot of ex-opponents were coming out saying, gentlemen, like, oh, this is a class player, all that. Peter saying, remember Galvin knocked Paddy Russell's notebook out of his hand. Yes, I remember one instant as well, Matthew, that will be clear in your head. Ty Kennelly punching Nicholas Murphy in the face 5 seconds into the All-Ireland final from the throw-up, and he openly admitted that he knew before the game that he was going to do that the whole fucking time, and just completely got away with it. Just gets a free box in the face to begin the game. Anyway, we'll move on before we go down a rabbit hole about that. At the start of the week as well, the All-Star obviously nominees had been revealed, but the Player of the Year nominees were also revealed. So the 3 LGFA Player of the Year nominees were revealed this week. They are Kate Sullivan from Dublin, Hannah Tyrrell from Dublin, and Olivia Dively from Galway. Matthew, who do you think will get it? And then who would you give it to if you were given the award?
First of all, my 3 nominees would have been the exact same. I would have had the 2 Dublin girls, and as well, I would have had Vicky Wall above Olivia Dively. But I could see why Olivia Dively was picked. Absolutely brilliant pick. And we said one of the nights on one of the episodes, Séamus, that she is probably one of the most underrated LGFA players in the country. And it's brilliant that she does get the recognition, to be fair. So I would put my hands up there and say Olivia Dively probably deserves a nomination. I have a feeling Hannah Tyrrell will get it because of emotion and everything like that. Which I think is fair enough. I think last year in the Dublin jersey, played absolutely brilliant in the latter stage of Dublin. Clutch moments, obviously that 2-pointed kick. Well, 2-pointers aren't in LGFA, but a 2-pointed kick to equalise the game against Galway and bring it to extra time, which Dublin went ahead and won. That was a crucial moment in the year. And in terms of clutch moments, in terms of turning up for a county, Hannah Tyrrell did that. But in terms of scores overall, in terms of injecting a bit of pace, in terms of being one of the most, I would say, unsung heroes over the last few years, but has really stepped up her game. I think Kate Sullivan deserves the Player of the Year this year. And I'll tell you why, top scorer for play overall this season. Obviously, the last 2 years, she was probably an unsung hero. A lot of people would have thought, okay, we'll talk about Hannah Tyrrell, we'll talk about Carter Rowe, Noelle Healy or Nicole Owens when they were the Dublin panel as well. Nobody really thought about Kate Sullivan. A lot of people thought about, okay, this is a young player coming up through the ranks, has a lot of potential, has potential to do well in a certain game, but then doesn't do well on the big days. What I noticed in the games against Galway and the game against Meath in particular, the semi-final and the final, she injected a lot of pace into that Dublin team. And what simplified it even more on my choice for Player of the Year, Niamh O'Sullivan was on my podcast before the Meath and Dublin final, and she actually said, I asked her, who's the most important Dublin player? Who should Meath watch out for? She said without hesitation, it's Kate Sullivan. Without a shadow of a doubt, because of her pace, because of her ability to inject something into a game that needed life, and I think she's an absolutely incredible player this season. And in terms of performances, I think she deserves it. But I have a feeling Hannah Tyrrell might get it because of emotion. Well, we'll see.
I think you're making good points in terms of that. I think for me, as good a year as Olivia Divilly had, and she was amazing. Like, I was there at the semi-finals in O'Connor Park, and Olivia Divilly very much single-handedly dragged Galway back into that game from the depths in extra time, and they looked for a moment like they might actually, grab Dublin at the death. Olivia Divilly was amazing for Galway all throughout the year, but I think due to the fact that Dublin won the All-Ireland, I think it will very likely be one of Hannah Tyrrell or Kate Sullivan. I think both of them were absolutely amazing. You're talking clutch moments. Kate Sullivan saving the day against Waterford, getting a draw. That changed Dublin's entire championship, because then we got a much more winnable quarter-final tie, etc., etc. Whereas Hannah Tyrrell, you're looking at the semi-final, that free that Hannah Tyrrell kicked to send the game to extra time was an unbelievable kick. She scored the penalty earlier in that game. She was superb in the final. Kate Sullivan was brilliant in the final as well. Those are the days to turn up in. For me, I'd be happy if Kate Sullivan or Hannah Tyrrell got it. But I think Kate Sullivan, will have, as scary as this is, I think Kate Sullivan can get better still. I still think she has ceilings to go up on. She was absolutely amazing for Sylvester's in the club championship both last year and this year. I still think she's not at her peak, which is terrifying. I still think she's going to get better. Hannah Tyrrell, it's hard not to give it to her. It was the last dance. And what a way to sign off, with another All-Ireland in the back pocket. And she was absolutely instrumental. And without her, I don't think Dublin would have even got to the final, let alone win it. So for me, I'd probably give it to Hannah Tyrrell. Aaron?
Yeah, I'd probably go with Kate Sullivan, to be honest with you. I do think Hannah Tyrrell is the better player overall, and she's obviously had the better career. And like talking about clutch moments and everything, like she can pop up time and time again with big scores and big moments. But I do think overall, when you look at last year, I think Kate Sullivan was that bit better, in my opinion. And even like what you said, like she definitely does have a level to go up on as well. Like, what did she score? 9 points for Sylvester's the last day out versus Crokes, like in phenomenal form that day as well. So I think Kate Sullivan overall had the better year last year, but I do agree with what Matthew was saying as well. Like, I think given Hannah Tyrrell's, like, given some of her performances and everything else, given her legendary status in the game, I think she probably does win it. But I do think for me, I think Kate Sullivan was slightly better.
Liam, would you be tipping Kate, Hannah, or would you be going wild card and going for Olivia?
No, I'm not going wild card. To the happiness of the two Dubs. I think first of all, had Kerry got to the All-Ireland final, I feel like Sheaf Roche would have been a worthy nominee as well. I think she was absolutely excellent all year. Like Matthew said, Vicky Wall could have been a great nominee as well. And look, Olivia Divilly this year was absolutely fantastic. But I think realistically, the two Dublin players are going to be the ones that will probably come out with it. I feel like Hannah or Sullivan's one in a way for me is kind of like John McGrath's in the hurling. I feel like because there's just another level she can go up as well. But what a level she has had all year, especially from play. Like I think what she got in the end is a 5.15 from play, or no, it's 5.13 from play this season, which is absolutely sensational. Now look, Hannah Tyrrell was absolutely amazing this year, and like you mentioned, the career she's had, it won't be matched by a lot of players in history, if we're being honest with you. But excuse me, I actually would give it to Sullivan as well. I think she's an absolute beast. Like you mentioned there, almost single-handedly won Sylvester's the Dublin Championship as well. I just think she's that type of player who can turn it on, and when she turns it on, she's absolutely unplayable. So yeah, I would actually give it to Sullivan, but I reckon Tyrrell might just win it, like you mentioned, for kind of sentimental value. But I would give it to Sullivan personally.
Yeah, I think if either of them win it, I'd be happy. I think both of them had incredible years. Both of them had clutch moments. Given it was the last dance, I think that might tip it in Hannah's favour, but she's more than a worthy recipient of the award. Peter says, grain of rice nod to Kate Sullivan, and Dublin is great says, I would have to give it to Hannah. So we're split in the comment section as well on it as well. And we're going to move on now to the club championship game. So lads, just very briefly, I explained it to use at the beginning of the episode, and Liam, you remember it well. Stop the bus on the club championship edition. So starting off, we have Friday the 10th of October. And this article is on the 42, done by Fintan O'Toole. So big shout out to him. I'm just going to run through the club games from this weekend. And if I get to a game that you want to discuss, just yell, stop the bus. Don't actually yell it though, like, because, you know, we're trying to have a bit of decorum, lads. But we'll start with Friday. So the Louth Senior Football Relegation Final is between Geraldines and St. Joseph's. Then we have the Armagh Senior Football Semi-Finals taking place between Friday and Saturday. The Friday game is between Clonairon and Madden, and the Saturday game is between Crossmaglen Rangers and St. Patrick's, and both of those games are taking place in the Boxit Athletic Grounds. Then in Carlow, the Éire Óg versus Tinnerland is the relegation final. Cork Senior Relegation Final replay between Carbery Rangers and Valley Rovers is on at 2. The Derry Senior Football Semi-Finals take place between Saturday and Sunday. The Saturday's game is between Glen and O'Donovan Rossa Mahara Felt. And Sunday's game, let me just get it up here right quick for you. Sunday semi-final is between Slotneil and Sean O'Leary's Newbridge. That one is on Sunday. You are being very patient, lads, without not trying to get off the bus just yet. We've gone through Armagh and Derry. I thought maybe we'd be stopped. Galway Senior semi-finals are on Saturday as well. Moycullen against Tuam Stars and Currafin against Salthill Knocknacarra.
Stop the bus there. I think me and Matthew are about stopping the bus at the same time there.
Yeah, we're all getting off at the same stop here. Matthew, I'll come to you first, just because you have predicted Salthill Knocknacarra, as have I, to win the Connacht Championship.
And I went further than that. I went for the whole thing. I went Salthill Knocknacarra to win the All-Ireland as well. But apparently a lot of people in Galway think Corofin might win this game, but like, this is a chance now for Salthill Knocknacarra to prove that they are the best team in Galway. This is a chance to prove for some of them players, the likes of Rob Finnerty, the likes of John Maher, that they are worthy top inter-county footballers. This is a chance for them to prove their worth against a side that has been there, done that in the Galway Championship. I think it's a huge game for both sides. Well, to an extent, and you mentioned this, Séamus, about Corofin facing Padre Piers last year. Is there a hunger with Corofin? Possibly not. Is there a hunger with Salthill Knocknacarra with the players that they have? Certainly. I think there is. So I would expect Salthill Knocknacarra to win this game, but I'm still nervous that Corofin could do it. I really am. Like, there's a history there with Corofin. I'm not sure though. I don't know what's do you lads know the situation? Is Gary Sice still playing?
Gary Sice is still be on the panel, but I don't know if they're turning to him as much as they have done. And for their sake, and like in the future, I would kind of hope that they aren't, just because, I mean, surely he's not as good as he was. Like, when he was at his peak, he was fucking amazing. But like, if you're talking for the future of Corofin, the baton, someone would want to be taking the baton off him now, because perfect example is like St. Vincent's, you know, Mossy Quinn was still their main man at, you know, 39-40, and everyone was saying, oh, isn't that great? Mossy's still doing the business for Vincent's. But like, the bottom line is that the baton wasn't being taken off him either. So Corofin would want to, and then you've seen how Vincent's have struggled over the last few years, getting relegated and stuff like that. So Corofin would want to take the baton off Gary Sice as well, and they'd want to have people coming up on the scene. But for Salthill, they have all the tools there. They have all the players that they could possibly need. Matthew Thompson, Tom O'Callaghan, John Maher. Like, as good a forward line as you'll ever see in the club game. So Aaron, you said stop the bus as well. Can they take that next step? And then who do you think that would be in the final against them should they win it between Moycullen and Tuam Stars?
Yeah, like, I think it's, yeah, but like, especially when you look at Salthill Knocknacarra, as you said, like with some of the stars that they have of John Maher, Tom O'Callaghan, Robert Finnerty, Cathal Sweeney. I mean, like, it is, like, I was doing a bit of research, obviously, for the kind of weekly Instagram reel that I put out, and like, I came across 7 inter-county players, but there was actually more. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's like it's incredible how stacked their panel is. They haven't won a county title since 2012. You're kind of wondering how, but it probably is down to the brilliance of the likes of Corofin, Moycullen, Mount Bellew, Moylock. Corofin are just like, they're kind of just like, they're very cute, they're very clever. Like, they, like, even going through their team as well, like, a lot of them lads are actually still there as well. Like, I didn't come across Gary Sice, but like, you've still got Michael Lundy, you've still got Martin Farragher. Like, you've still got a lot of these players who are still there. Darren Liam Silk are still doing the business for Currafin as well. Didn't see his name pop up, I don't think.
He was always one who impressed me. Like,
yeah. I'd say he could be there. I'd say he probably is. But obviously the commenters can let us know on that, to be fair. But yeah, like, they're bidding for 3 in a row in Galway as well. Like, the most quiet 3 in a row you probably hear of, because of the fact that they've gone and won, done more, and they've won 3 in a row All Irelands and everything else. But yeah, like, they just have that know-how of coming through. Like, even though they've changed managers and everything else, but you do feel like at some point Salt Hill are going to make the breakthrough with some of the players that they have. They have the younger players as well, like the likes of Matthew Thompson as well, and Tom O'Clahan. Like, these lads are kind of slowly coming into their prime. You feel like with Currafin, like, there is still a lot of the same names there. So you feel like there should be a hungrier team there that can beat them, like what we saw with Mike Cullen and Mount Belly and Moylock, like in the years previously. So it's a huge one. Like, I do think Salt Hill might just do it, though. I think they might just come through it with some of their players. I feel like this is their time to really kind of come through it. And then in terms of the other game, I probably would look towards Mike Cullen to get over the line there.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Liam, you didn't say stop the bus, so you've missed this stop. Kerry Senior Football quarterfinals. Rathmore against East Kerry in Fitzgerald Stadium, and Austin Stacks against Kenmare Shamrocks. That's taking place on the Saturday as well. In Leitrim, we have the relegation final between Melvin Gales and St. What?
Matthew said stop the bus there, but you didn't hear him.
Oh, he said stop the bus on the Kerry Senior Football quarterfinals. All right, let's hear it for the B Championship in Kerry.
So in there against Austin Stacks, that is a big game, because obviously the context of this, a lot of people might think, oh, Dr. Crokes are over the championship. Liam and Seamus' predictions gone to the spongy here. It hasn't, because as of yet, because of the ruling in Kerry, Dr. Crokes won the club championship. So if East Kerry, I think West Kerry and Mid Kerry, if one of them win the championship in the county scene, then Dr. Crokes will still represent Kerry in the Munster Championship. And thank God for you lads, your prediction's still alive there. But
come on, East Kerry. Come on. Come up.
Going down the drain.
But when you look at the other clubs in it, you have, I think it's Spas, one of them, Rathmore, Austin Stacks, Kenmare Shamrocks, and Dingle. Now, I think 3 of them are dangerous clubs in this, and 2 of them are playing each other in the quarterfinals, Kenmare Shamrocks and Austin Stacks. Now, Austin Stacks have a very good cohort of players at this present moment in time. A lot of people might have thought a few years ago they were kind of lucky to win Kerry. They had an aging Kieran Donaghy in the team, and you were thinking, how do they win Kerry? How do they dominate Kerry and things like that? I look at their team now. In midfield, they have Joe O'Connor and Ben Murphy. A lot of people might not know who Ben Murphy is. Context, he was a Kerry minor captain a few years ago. He played under 20 as well, and AFL have been lucky at this guy. He is an absolute really, really good player. You have Paddy Lane in the forwards as well, who's done very good things at school level. You have some brilliant players in that Austin Stacks team. You're facing up against Kenmare Shamrocks, who have the likes of Stephen O'Brien and Sean O'Shea in their team. So it is going to be an interesting game to see who comes out of this game. Obviously, Dingle there as well. Will be interesting to see how they get on the quarterfinals this weekend. East Kerry, I think they're probably the best bet for keeping Dr. Crokes in contention for the Munster Championship. Yes, Paddy Clifford's not there, and that's a big loss because he's just taking a bit of a break as of now. So that is a huge loss for them. But they still have the man himself, David Clifford. They still have Rory Murphy, who's a very, very good player. He played half forward against Cork in the Munster Championship. I was really, really impressed with him that night, and I think he's a really good young player. So he will definitely be one of East Kerry's kind of main shining lights other than David Clifford. So it will be a very interesting championship to see who goes on and wins it. But it's a bit of a predicament now, lads, that Dr. Crokes are in, because do you kind of stick or twist? Because do you keep training until all the divisional sides are out? Or what do you do? It's a kind of a weird situation for them. I'm sure they're used to it, but look.
Yeah, no, it definitely would be a tricky one to navigate. Looking at the time is up, boys, we're ticking into an hour now, which we all know, but past an hour and a half, we start getting delusional. So what we will do is, if you say stop the bus and someone else says stop the bus, how are we going to decide who gets to talk about the game? Maybe we'll do, I don't know, a quick game of rock, paper, scissors or something. And then the winner gets to talk about the game. So the Limerick Senior Football Championship Round 5 group games, you have Newcastle West against Ballysteen. Aaron, you'll be keeping a close eye on that one. Kildimo Pallaskenry against Galtee Gales. Mungo St. Paul's against St. Kieran's. Father Casey's against the Piershig. Ula against Rathkeil. And Adair against Monaleen. They're all on the Saturday. The Mayo Senior Football semi-finals are also on the Saturday. Ballina Stephenites against Knockmore. And Crossmolina against Westport. Interestingly, Ballina and Knockmore are playing in Crossmolina. Crossmolina are playing Westport in Charlestown. So just allergic to double headers, I see. But anyway, those games are on. Very, very interested. Quick prediction. I think Ballina and Crossmolina are going to be in the Mayo final against each other. The Waterford Senior Football quarterfinal is also on Saturday. Rowan Moore against Galtier. And then in hurling, we have the London Senior semi-finals in hurling between Brothers Pierce's versus Kilburn Gales and St. Gabriel's versus Sean Tracy's. The Tipperary Senior Hurling semi-final, Lockmore Castleiney against Holy Cross Ballycahill, and that one is live on RTE2 in Semple Stadium. No takers, interesting. Wexford Senior relegation final then between Crossabeg Ballymurn against Oilgate Glenbrine, and then we're into Sunday. The Antrim Senior Football final, Dunloy Cucullins against Clonnaheron Cargan, and that's in Corrigan Park in Belfast at 1:30, and it is live on TG Cahir. Matthew, you're happy about that, aren't you?
He wants to say something. I can see him starting to smile.
Maybe we'll move on before we get in trouble. The Carlow Senior Football final, Rathvilly against Bagenalstown Gales in Netwatch Dr. Cullen Park at 4 p.m. The Cavan Senior Football final is also on Sunday between Gowna and Kingscourt Stars in Kingspan Breffni Park at 4 p.m. The Clare Senior Football final, Era Og Innis looking to make it the double in the Banner County. Era Og Innis going up against St. Joseph's Dura Bearfield in Zimmer Biomet Cusick Park. The Cork Senior Football semi-finals. Now, Matthew, I'll fuck you off the bus at this one.
We'll be getting on it.
Nemo Rangers against Newcestown and Ballincollig against St. Finbarrs. Take it away, man.
Yeah, two I would say semi-finals where a lot of people would expect the city sides to come through in Nemo and St. Finbarrs. I think St. Finbarrs and Ballincollig, even looking at the stats for this game, I think like Ballincollig don't really have much of a chance. Like I know they pushed Nemo Rangers the first day out, but that put context on that. That was the weekend of the All-Ireland football final. That was a long time ago. Since then, they drew against St. Michael's and they got over Douglas and Duhallow by the skin of their teeth. This is a St. Finbarrs team that put 6 goals past Castlehaven. That put 4 past them by half-time. I know Castlehaven weren't great defensively that day, but they are a very, very good side at scoring goals, St. Finbarrs. And when you have Stephen Sherlock in the team, anything's possible. Brian Hayes is fully fit as well. And as well as that, they went out of the hurling last week. So I think all their focus and the eggs of the basket will be on this game. So it is. I think the Bars should go on and win this game. It is going to be difficult to see how Ballincollig get over the line. The other game, and this is the curtain raiser, which is quite surprising in my opinion, Nemo against Newcestown. Now, Nemo are my favourites to win the Munster Championship, and they probably still are. Mark Cronin and Brian Hayes with a wide, that is the underage Cork player, and Conor Horgan are absolutely brilliant form for Nemo, as is Kevin O'Donovan, the wing back, and Micheál A. Martin in goal. It'll be interesting, just on a side note off the pitch, it'll be interesting to see if Micheál Martin is in the crowd for this one. We'll have to see. But I think so I'd say we asked a ton of questions, but he just won't answer. But anyway, we'll move on from politics. This game, Nemo probably will be favourites to win the game, in fairness, because they're the most esteemed team. They've got the last 3 county finals as well, and they'll be hoping to reach a 4th in a row. But this Newcestown team have shown one thing that is probably not known across the whole country unless you kind of look at Newcestown. It's spirit. This team has proven it time and time again. They beat Castlehaven in the group stage. They beat Mallow as well, who also reached the semi-finals last season, and they beat Valley Rovers quite comprehensively. And even when they were performing kind of under par, they got over the line against Carrigaline in the quarterfinal on penalties. we were talking about dual clubs earlier on in the podcast as well, about Navina, Ballyboden with 2 separate teams. This is a Newcestown side that have the same exact group of players in both codes. And this is a Newcestown team that have only lost 1 game across both codes, and that was against Charleville. Included in that, they drew against Middleton, who are in the hurling final next weekend against Sars as well. They drew with them in hurling. They beat Newtown Chandler in hurling as well. So they are the model dual club, especially for playing the exact same team. And in West Cork as well, this isn't a city area. This is a rural area. They have done absolutely brilliantly to get to the semi-finals. You might say for Newcestown, they're too reliant on David Buckley. A lot of people are talking about Stephen Sherlock, and a lot of people are talking about Mark Cronin and Brian Hurley and all these forwards in Cork. David Buckley is definitely one to watch. He scored 37 points in the Cork Championship. He is definitely one to watch this Sunday if Nemo are to go on and win this game. And funnily enough, their second top scorer for Newcestown is 42-year-old Ty Toomey. Watch out for him. He is a very, very good player for Newcestown in general. Is there a shock on the cards? I'm not sure. But I will say from my own personal point of view, it's a win-win for me. Because if Nemo win, my prediction stays alive on Cúilín Media. If Newcestown win, we have a final to preview on the Southern Star podcast and the Southern Star paper as well, because they're West Cork. So, look, it's a win-win for me. I wouldn't mind either side winning this game, but it is going to be a very, very difficult game to call. But I think most people will be expecting a St. Finbarrs and Nemo Rangers final, and obviously Castlehaven are knocked out, so big opportunity for both them city clubs.
Absolutely, and that was a very Micheál Martin answer, where you're like, I'm happy either way. A very good politician answer. The Donegal Senior Football Final is also on Sunday, Guidor against Naomh Conaill, and that's the one I've put in the thumbnail for this. I think it's going to be an absolute cracker. Naomh Conaill, obviously some superb players, Guidor as well. Their legacy with the McGee brothers, Kevin Cassidy over the years, be really, really interesting to see who comes out on top. That one is in O'Donnell Park, Letterkenny at 3:30. We've loads more games to run through here. Kerry Senior Football quarterfinals are on. Spa against Mid Kerry and Dingle against West Kerry there on the Sunday, along with the other 2 on Saturday. The Laois Football Final is also on Sunday at O'Moore Park, Port Laois at 3:30 between Courtwood and Port Darlington. You want to stop the bus? Take it away, Midlands 103.
I suppose it's just it's a mention for Courtwood being in the final for the very first time. It's a big, big moment for them. Obviously for Port Darlington, I mentioned this last week, and I was interviewing Sean O'Flynn from Courtwood and Ronan Coffey from Port Darlington, and it's kind of the differentiate. I can't say the word. Jesus.
Differentiator. Is it?
Differentiate. Never mind. You know what I mean? In the type of questions you'd be asking them, because the first thing I said to Ronan Coffey was, "Well, you've been here before, so you know what happens here." Whereas for Courtwood and Sean O'Flynn, he kind of said it himself that unless they finals are there for winning, and that's the main thing. But at the same time, it's unbelievable for them to be in the final. They took down Port Laois in the quarterfinals, took down St. Joseph's, who were the winners 2 years ago in the semi-final, with an unbelievable last-minute 2-pointer as well. Put 4 goals past Port Laois, which really rocks the championship, to be honest with you. Port Darlington didn't have as much of an issue in their semi-final. They took down Craigcullen without much of a fuss. And ironically, their manager, Pat Rowe, said it was their worst performance of the season. They won by 12 points. And he said it was their worst performance of the season. So I'm thinking to myself, if that's their worst performance of the season, then Christ. But no, Courtwood are going into this final with a lot of momentum. They're going into it with a lot of hope. It'd be great. Look, nothing against Port Darlington. If they win it, then fair play to them. And especially, I feel like the way they went out to the Wicklow champions last year in the Leinster Championship, they'd want to have another bite of the cherry at that. But it would be great to see Courtwood winning the championship. It'd be great to see someone else winning the championship in Laois, other than the likes of Port Laois we've seen over the years, and Port Darlington. Obviously, St. Joseph's won it 2 years ago in, again, arguably one of the worst club finals I'd ever had the displeasure of seeing in my life, to be honest with you. But no, listen, for Courtwood, it'd be absolutely fantastic if they got over the line. It's going to be very, very tricky. Port Darlington are going for back-to-back titles, and they are the favourites going into it, and probably rightfully so. But yeah, I think it'd be fantastic for Courtwood to win their first Laois title. It's going to be a great occasion for them either way. But if they can put in a big 60 minutes, start off strong like they kind of have over the last couple of weeks, then we could be in for a cracker.
Yeah, no, it should be a very, very interesting game. Be interesting to see if Port Darlington's kind of dominance over the last few years can be broken and a new team can break out. The Leitrim semi-final, interestingly, there is a replay taking place in the Leitrim Football Championship. Ballinamore Sean O'Heslins against Fianna St. Callans. That one is in Park Sean McDermott at 4 p.m. The Longford final is also taking place between Columkill and Kilo Young Emmets in Pierce Park at 4:15. The Meath Senior Football Final. Aaron, I feel like you might have an interest in this one. Ratoath against Summerhill. That was in Port Talton in Navan at 2 p.m. The Monaghan Senior Football Semi-Finals. Clontibbert are going up against Scottstown, and Inishkeen are going up against Maharakloon.
I'll stop the bus there. Not at the Meath final, but I do agree the Meath final is that's going to be a cracker of a game. But I do think Clontibbert O'Neill's versus Scottstown, I think it's going to be a really, really interesting one, to be fair, because you've obviously got Conor McManus there with Clontibbert. So like, and he's obviously kind of one of the standout, obviously one of the best players we've ever seen. But like Scottstown are stacked with players, like in fairness, and they're actually bidding to win a 10th county title in 14 years, which shows their dominance as well. So no, absolutely, that's one worth keeping an eye on there.
Absolutely. And in the relegation playoffs in Monaghan is Ballybay against Carmarthen and Aucknamullen against Trua. The Sligo Senior Football Final also takes place. Coolera Strandhill, the current Connacht champions, going up against Shamrock Gales. Obviously, they want to get back to the same stage. I'm going to stop the bus, though, at the next one, the Tyrone Senior Football Semi-Finals. Loch McCrory against Carrickmore. And then me and Liam's pick to win the All-Ireland, Errigal Kieran, going up against Trillick. And that's in Healy Park, Omagh, at 6 p.m. Interestingly, the Tyrone semi-finals not a double-header as well. Like, I think any county that doesn't make the semi-finals a double-header is really missing a trick, because, like, I was at the Dublin semi-finals and you watch, Nafina, Kilmacud back-to-back with Coola Ballyboden, and, like, it was, talk about bang for your buck, like, it was serious days of entertainment. But I think those games are, like, Trillick are going to, have a huge amount of testing for Errigal Kieran as well. I've seen an article as well talking about the late Jody Gormley and how like his influence is still so prevalent on that Trillick team, and they've got super players there, super players, the likes of Lee Brennan and everything. So they can cause a lot of damage to Errigal Kieran. Errigal, though, for me, too strong, and I think if anybody is capable of ending the curse or the hoodoo of going back-to-back in Tyrone is this Errigal Kieran team, and they stand 2 games away from doing it. Now, obviously, as they go further and further, the likelihood of them being caught in the Tyrone Championship goes up. But I think Trillick could beat them. I really do think. Like, I'm not gonna jinx it, but I think if looking at the 4 teams that are left, I think if Errigal get through this, I think they beat either Loch McCrory or Carrickmore in the final. But I think Trillick could really put it up to them. So it'll be really interesting to see. And then the final football game on Sunday that we have on the list, the Waterford Senior Football quarterfinal between Kilrosanti and Abbeyside. That takes place in Dungarvan at 2. And the hurling then on Sunday, we have the Down semi-finals, Portaferry against Breda and Ballygalget against Ballycran. And the Dublin senior hurling semi-finals, Aaron, I feel like we're going to get thrown off the bus here. Matthew can throw us off the bus this time. Luke and Sarsfields against Ballyboden St. Enders and Kilmacud Crokes against Nafina. But interestingly, it was the Offaly man that piped up. So, Aaron, do you want to play rock, paper, scissors on behalf of the Dubs here to get to talk about these two?
No, I'll let Liam crack on. Let's hear the opinions.
Go on.
I was going to stop the bus at the Tipperary hurling semi-finals, but I actually thought not. Do you know what? Just because the Dublin championship will be more effective to me, God forbid, hoping that we win next Sunday, and remain in the championship. But I suppose because the Dublin championship would be more one that I'd be keeping an eye on, as well as another championship that might come up in a few minutes as well. I think Kilmacud Crokes and Nafina has the makings of an absolute cracker. It has been over the last couple of years. I still look back on last year's final and I think to myself, how on earth did Nafina win that? Because like I had to watch that final back so many times, obviously doing the stats with KK last year, coming up to the final, whatever. And just every time I watched that game, I was watching that game half the time instead of doing my college assignments the week of the Leinster final. But like, I just kept watching that match back going, how did Nafina win this? How did Kilmacud not win it? Do you know what I mean? Like, they were just so much better than them for me in most departments anyways. But it just showed Nafina winning that title in 23. It gave them a new sort of ambition and a new sort of lease of life that just said, we're not done until the game is over. And that's that. And especially after last weekend as well in the football, the way Nafina took down Kilmacud Crokes. I know, like you mentioned, it's basically 2 separate teams, but this could really get hot and heavy over the course of the 60 minutes. I mean, I think there was only 3 players who were playing, the 2 of them last week. I think it was a Conor McHugh, Tom Brennan, and Diarmuid Clerkin, who is ironically, his father and my father are great friends because they work for the same company. So hopefully Diarmuid's keeping well, and thanks a lot for beating us last year. But yeah, no, I think this is the makings of an absolute cracking game. This could be another type of scoring game that we saw between Na Fianna and Cúilín. Genuinely, it could be. I think both sides have such quality in them that it could go right down to the wire. And I just have a feeling that Na Fianna are still the strongest side in Dublin, probably still maybe potentially the strongest side in Leinster. Although ironically, I was looking at the odds the other day for both the club championships in the hurling and football in Leinster. And I don't know how, and I don't know whether I agree with it or not, but my club's above Na Fianna on Paddy Power's odds to win the Leinster title. Ballyhale are first, so Aaron will be delighted. And us and O'Loughlin Gales are joint second. And I believe Na Fianna are actually fifth.
Jesus.
And
wow,
Kilmacud
that's
Broke
crazy, yeah.
Na Fianna. So
Kilmacud above Na Fianna.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's like I'd be surprised if Kilmacud beat Na Fianna. Genuinely, I think that's how much it's changed over the last 2 years.
I wouldn't say I'd be personally shocked, but I'd certainly be more surprised, I think, this year that Na Fianna have lost. You know, I just think they're a very, very strong team. And I know, again, look, separate teams bar a couple of players that were playing, but the momentum I can imagine from the Fianna at the moment after winning that football last weekend, the ambition for them to go and do a double now would just be absolutely off the charts. But yeah, I'm predicting Na Fianna to reach the Dublin final, and I think regardless of who comes out of the other semi-finals, if one of these wants to take that one, I think Na Fianna will win the Dublin championship.
Yeah, no, I would agree, but I actually think that Lucan are going to turn over Ballybowden in the other semi-final. Aaron, in a word, would you agree Lucan to beat Bowden and Na Fianna to beat Crokes?
I think so, yeah. Like, I'd probably back you with Lucan coming through. I think the progress they've made over the last couple of years, I think they are a team that is coming. There's no doubt about it with some of the younger players that are there. So I'd agree with you on that one. The Na Fianna Kilmacud Crokes one is interesting. Like, I definitely could see Crokes causing a bit of a surprise there. There will obviously be a good reliance on the likes of Ronan and Brian Hayes in terms of getting them over the line. Alex Considine as well. I feel like whoever comes this probably does win it, but like, it's an interesting one. Like, what do you think is a bigger shock? What Na Fianna did to Crokes last week, or potentially what Crokes could do to Na Fianna? Like, what do you think is the bigger shock there?
Na Fianna beating Crokes in football for me.
Yeah,
the bigger shock. The other thing as well is, like, Na Fianna were so bad in round 1 against Ballybowden that if you were to say that they would meet Ballybowden in the final, you'd be like, what kind of easy draw did they get? Like, what kind of run? But the fact that they went through Kilmacud to get there, hugely impressive. And the guarantee is that final between Bowden and Na Fianna, that will not be like that again. There's no way Na Fianna are going to push them all the way. I think the Bowden are still going to win, but it's going to be really like, because the other thing as well is, like, genuinely from being there, and it sounds crazy to say this, and like, let's obviously don't let me go too far down the rabbit hole, but like, when I left, I was like, I don't even feel like Bowden played very well. Like, for the majority of the game, Cúilín were on top, and Bowden just struck. It was like, fighting against Deontay Wilder or something. It's like they hit them and for 5 minutes they just absolutely took over. But for about 50 minutes, Cúilín were in charge, and it just Bowden hit at the right times. Dara Sweeney was unbelievable. 2 goals in the final few minutes, and they turn over Cúilín. And you could tell, looking at Cúilín leaving, they were like, how the fuck have we lost that? Like, genuinely, they looked so good. And like, I was in the stadium watching, thinking, not only do I fancy Cúilín to win the final now, I was looking at them thinking, they look in good nick to go for another All-Ireland run. Like, they look good. And it's in my opinion, it's one of those sliding doors moments where, like, what if Cúilín had just hung on? Like, then they would have been definitely a contender to take serious going forward in the All-Ireland. But they're out now, and it's going to be really interesting, because I thought Ballyboden were doing the same thing that they'd done the previous 2 years, which is like flatter to deceive when the pressure really is on. But they really stood up in those last 5 minutes and they were brilliant. And I think just with how good Cian Darcy is, that battle between him and Conor Early in the midfield is going to be savage. Like, it's going to be unbelievable to watch. But that's for another day. Moving on, we're back on the bus. The Kildare hurling final between Naas and Maynooth. Naas going for another Kildare title. The Kilkenny hurling semi-finals got Mullinavat against O'Loughlin Gales and Ballyhale Shamrocks against Dixborough. And the Tip senior hurling semi-final between Drummond and Nina Era Og in Semple Stadium in Thurles at 4 p.m. And then we also have the relegation final in Tip between Lorha and Mullinahone in Templemore at 2:30. And then the Wexford semi-finals, we have Rathnor St. Anne's going up against Naveana, followed by St. Martin's going up against Fern St. Aidan's in Chadwick's Wexford Park. That's a double header there. And we also have the Wicklow hurling final between Bray Emmets and Carnew Emmets in Ockram at 3 p.m. Obviously, Carnew Emmets trying to bounce back after their football final loss to Bolton Glass last weekend. Before we wrap up, unfortunately, that article did not include fixture information from the LGFA or the Camogie. So what I will do now, I will throw it randomly. I'll go Matthew, I'll go you first. Any LGFA club championship games have caught your eye this weekend?
Well, I'm going to go 2 in my own county. That is the senior county finals. It's the Cork finals in Camogie and LGFA this weekend. So in the LGFA, it's a replay between Ada and Aero. I think it's on Saturday in MTU again. Ada and Aero drew the last time. It was 10 points to 1-7. And as you know, Ada were my pick to win the Munster Championship in LGFA. Ballycap McCarver are gone now. And interestingly, the winners of this will play Comer Rangers Waterford in the quarterfinal of the Munster LGFA Championship. Look at the draws and everything there. So it will be very interesting to see that. Obviously, Ada have to get over this game against Aero. It is a very interesting game. Ada have the likes of Hannah Looney in their team and obviously some very good players, the likes of the Leahys and Rachel and Sarah and Abigail Ring and Roisin Feed and some very good players. And interestingly as well, Amy O'Connor, the Cork Camogie player, is actually a sub player for the LGFA team. So I didn't know Amy O'Connor was a skilled ladies footballer, but there you go. She's in the AHDA team. You've Aero there with the Callans and the Clearys, Emer Scotty there as well. So it should be a very interesting game between two very, very good sides. This tie actually was the final of the Cork LGFA final last year, and it went all the way to free kicks. So I think we could go the distance here again for the replay. And obviously in the Camogie final in MTU on Sunday, it is St. Finbarrs against St. Catherine's. Obviously St. Finbarrs will go in as favourites. That's obvious. Saoirse McCartan's in the team. You have the Callahans in Orla, Maeve and Grania. Obviously the Callahans are playing the football on the Saturday and then the Camogie on the Sunday. So 2 county finals for the Callahans this weekend. So not a weird weekend at all there for them. They have some excellent players, the Bars, Kate Wall there as well, Ella Wiggett Barrett there as well. That's John's sister. So John is doing very well for the men's players for St. Finbarrs and hurling and football, and so is Ella as well. St. Catherine's are obviously the conquerors of Sarsfields in the quarterfinal of the Cork Championship. Sorry to bring that up, Liam. So Catherine's are a very, very good team. They have the likes of Laura Hayes in there. Laura Hayes, I think, is the captain of the St. Catherine's team and was a player of the year in the Camogie Championship last year in the All-Ireland Series. So that'll be a very, very interesting game. I would say the Bars will win the Camogie, and I think I'm sticking with Ada for the LGFA. So it should be a very interesting weekend in Cork there.
Absolutely, Liam. Could I get any that are catching your eye this weekend?
Yeah, I suppose no shock. The Offaly Camogie final is on this weekend. Shinrone are taking on Burr. Both clubs have some serious players as well. Shinrone have the likes of Sharon Shanahan, who was part of the All-Ireland winning intermediate team this year, was part of the Ashburn Cup team for UL this year as well. Burr have Kate Pilkington in their ranks as well. Very famous family, the Pilkingtons in Offaly as well. Shinrone are looking for their first title since 2016. They were a very dominant side throughout the 2010s, going for their first title in 9 years, took down the champion St. Killian's the last day by a point. Burr unfortunately bet my club, but Cormac Line in the semi-finals, but Burr are a very, very strong club. I believe it's the 3rd title they're going for in 4 years. They lost the title last year to St. Killian's, which would have hurt them very, very badly. But they're a very, very strong side. I probably would maybe fancy it to Burr, but the momentum that Shinrone have, especially after winning that game, like the two sides met each other in the group stages and there was only 3 points to separate them. So I think it'll be a very close final. I'll be at the game on Sunday, along with the intermediate final as well. So I'm really, really looking forward to those. I suppose even to give a mention to the Westmeath Camogie final as well. Raharney are going for their 11th title in a row this weekend, which is just absolutely mental. It's your Schlockneils, it's your Ballygunners, your Ballymacarbeys, which we won't talk about. But yeah, it's I feel like the teams in Westmeath are getting a bit closer to them to a degree, because they didn't have it all their way in the semi-final. But for me, Raharney are still the strongest side in the Westmeath Camogie Championship, and they've appointed Barry O'Mara as the new Westmeath Camogie manager recently as well, so he might be looking to pick up a couple of players there for the year next year, because they lost a lot of players at the start of the year. And even just to briefly give my predictions for the Offaly football semi-finals this weekend, I think it'll be an Eden-Derry-Tullamore final. I think Tullamore should have enough for road, and I have a feeling Eden-Derry, they're on a good run this year. I think they'll take down Ferban in the semi-final.
Yeah, good picks, it has to be said. And we're looking at the clock there. We're going to get off before the hour and a half delusional time kicks in. But yeah, that's been another episode here on Cúilín Media. We had a full house for it, and we thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to all the people that dropped in comments throughout the show. Really, really helped to make it another enjoyable one. We'll be back this Sunday at 8 p.m. for another weekend review show, recapping on all of the club action from across the weekend. And of course, stay tuned to our Instagram page for any updates regarding that show as well. Well, until then, take care.